What's up, guys? Tommy Bowyer here from Move Rewind. Today I'm joined by MLC and we will be discussing The Batman. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, The Batman. If you
Bum,
are one
bum,
of the
bum.
7 people who watched my review of The Batman, thank you very much. And I hope you enjoyed this discussion. I am joined once again by MLC for
Hello.
our annual monthly discussion. So, first of all,
Annual monthly
MLC,
discussion.
annual monthly discussion. Well, yeah, it's once every month. Let's be honest. Once every month. It's an annual event. But anyway, MLC, how are you?
Hi. I'm doing brilliant. I watched the Batman on opening day, unlike you. I went on launch opening Friday. The cinema was
Right,
very, very busy.
right. Well, some of us had studying to do and things
What, on
like
a
that. So
Friday
I'm so
evening?
sorry. Yes, I study on a Friday evening,
I don't.
just like every says a lot, even though you get better grades than me. But that's not for here. But anyway, so MLC, your initial thoughts going into this film, were you excited about it or were you a bit nervous about the film?
I didn't really know what to think of this movie, if I'm being honest, going into it. I didn't, I tried to limit my expectations or the trailers I watched. I wanted to go in it with a bit of more open-minded with what they could do because, well, we've all seen a lot of Batman movies. We've all seen many different takes on the character. You know, remember the '90s Batmans all the way up to the how large and the big of a character Batman got with the Christopher Nolans, and then when we saw Batman return in the DCEU. So we've seen a lot of different interpretations and go on the Batman. So it was interesting to see them giving it another go under the direction of Matt Reeves. Of course, Matt Reeves being a director of so many fantastic movies. I mean, you just have to mention the Planet of the Apes trilogy to get a sense of how good of a director Matt Reeves really is. So I went into it with more of an open expectation. Didn't really know what to think going in. I was a bit unsure whether they could, well, not so much make a good Batman movie, but a Batman movie that stood out above what we've had before. You know, a Batman movie that would be memorable, not just, oh, that was good, but it didn't do anything new or anything good for me. So that was sort of what I was thinking going into it. So I was a bit unsure on how it might play out.
Mm. No, definitely. That's pretty much what I was thinking. I was concerned because obviously this film's been delayed several times, and it was originally supposed to star Ben Affleck and be directed by Ben Affleck, and then obviously there's so many changes. So yeah, it's always with films like that. Usually they don't turn out good, but as you said, Matt Reeves has got a good record as a director, so made me a bit optimistic for this film. But I had no idea what to expect when I went in. So obviously, what was your having seen the film? Like, what was your initial thoughts on it?
Wow, would you like? Well, it's funny that my initial thoughts when the movie ended was, I really need a wee because that movie was so damn long. That was my initial thoughts, but yeah, I sort of got mixed feelings on this movie, if I'm honest, because I really enjoyed it. I did really enjoy it. I liked how you know how they tried doing something a bit different to what we've seen before. It sort of feels comic booky, but also feels like they're sort of more tied into maybe a bit closer to the how Christopher Nolan did things, but also having a little bit more comic book flair, I guess, in a way. Yes, it was a bit of a different take on the character. It was yeah, Batman himself. Yeah, how they played it very differently because like we've seen Batman before being this big vigilante crime fighter, but in this movie they tried to give us more of Detective Batman, I would say, which we've not really seen a great deal of in previous movies. But
Hmm.
overall though, coming out of this movie, I really enjoyed it. I liked that we finally saw, proper take on these characters. We've seen Penguin, we've seen Riddler before in the 90s, but that was in the completely blown out and extravagant and flamboyant ways that those movies did. So seeing more of a grounded take on these characters was refreshing. But overall, though, what did I think of Batman? Well, I really enjoyed it, but I didn't come out the cinema blown away in a way. Like, I remember the first time I watched The Dark Knight. After the first time coming out that, I was blown away. Where this movie, yes, I really enjoyed it, but I didn't come out of it thinking, wow, that was like the most awesome, like newest, like craziest thing I've ever seen. So it wasn't blowing my head off, but I really did enjoy it, and yeah, I did. I enjoyed my time, but it didn't make me leave the cinema like, wow, that was like the craziest thing I've ever seen, or leave me scratching my head.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I really enjoyed this film. It was a unique Batman film, which is always a good thing, especially when there's been so many Batman films. Um, I always think with films like this, it's kind of I'm starting to call it the No Way Home treatment, in the sense that once it's released, everyone online is basically saying how rubbish the Dark Knight trilogy is now compared to this film, and kind of like how No Way Home happened with the Spider-Man films. Now, I'm trying to be objective here. I do not think that the Batman is better than the Dark Knight trilogy as a whole. It has some really impressive stuff, and as a first film, I would be first in line to see the sequel, because I think they've got the foundations there to build on really well. But it is not as good as the Dark Knight trilogy yet. I feel like it's the Dark Knight trilogy in high school, if that makes sense. Like, it hasn't learned everything yet, and it's still cooking. It still needs time to fully realize what this vision is. So anyway, this review this discussion, I should say, is basically going to be a lot more spoilerful than my original review. We're going to be discussing the characters in this film, and then we'll move on to the plot overall. Of course, it's quite a complex plot, and in 3 hours you need to pay attention in order to understand what's happening. But I think the first thing, as this is a Batman film, it's important to discuss the main character, the Batman, or Bruce Wayne. Now, Robert Pattinson, MLC. Now, I remember when he was cast, so many Batman fans were angry about Pattinson being cast because, of course, Twilight, which is, of course, what Pattinson's been famous for. So, what did you think of Pattinson's performance?
I thought overall it was good, especially as Batman. He put on. Yeah, I thought his performance was really good. Performances I would say in this movie are spot on. I think the performances from all the actors and characters in this movie were really spot on. But Robert Pattinson as Bruce Wayne or Batman, as Batman, I thought he was really good, and he fit into the role perfectly. The only criticisms that I might have of Robert Pattinson is as Bruce Wayne. Though I don't think that's so much a criticism of Robert Pattinson's performance. It's more of the characterization, how the film wrote and played on the dynamic between Batman and Bruce Wayne. I think there's a lot to be left for the character of Batman in this movie. Overall, I think Rob Pattinson did a good performance. The only criticism of the main character, the Batman himself, is I really like what his character does in this movie, but I think we need to get a bit more sense of what makes this Batman tick, what gives this Batman his motivation, what gave him his motivation to become vengeance in the first place. Like, in the Dark Knight trilogy, we see sort of the evolution of what gives Bruce Wayne his motivations and what drives him to become Batman. Of course, the Batman Begins is an origin story, so we get to see that, whereas as this is Batman Year 2, we don't quite get to know what got him to this point. So it would be nice to have a little bit more exposition and a bit more backstory as to something that makes this Batman tick and what drove him to become the Batman.
No, I agree with what you said. I would say this is the first Batman film when we see more of the Batman than we do Bruce
Yeah,
Wayne. I mean, he is the Batman a lot in this film, and he's really good at it. I like the detective way
yeah,
they went with the Batman in this. We see him trying to figure out stuff. We see all the gadgets. We see, and I like the fact also that he just turns up to places as Batman. Like
mm,
he turns up to the crime scenes and interacts with the police officers. He turns up to the club as Batman and is just walking in beating up people. I like that because it's like Batman's feared. He's not afraid to be around police and law officials and things like that.
yeah,
But as I said in my original review, as Bruce Wayne, you would know that this guy was Batman. I mean, there's no kind of, he doesn't do what Bale did in the sense he doesn't put on a kind of playboy facade for the
yeah,
public. He's dark. Like even as Bruce Wayne, he is dark. This is obviously a very broken Batman who, as it's only his second year, has become consumed with the
yeah,
Batman identity. Which I like that they did that, but it'll be interesting to see how that develops in future films.
yeah.
Because obviously Bruce Wayne just always looks exhausted in this because he's completely dedicated to his life as Batman now. He has no time for anything else.
Well, I don't think it's
Um,
so much he has time for anything else. It's like the thing I want to know is what made him so broken. What pushed him to the point where he's so broken. And in terms of like he doesn't have time to be Bruce Wayne. I mean, I think that's intentional because the dynamic between Bruce Wayne and the Batman is clearly that Bruce Wayne is a character of the Batman that he's forced to play in a way. Whereas when he's Batman, he can be his true self. Whereas he can tell in this movie that he despises every time he has to come out as Bruce Wayne, because that's more of a facade, a much more of an act for him, and you can tell by his performances every time he has to go out as Bruce Wayne, he completely hates it.
no, true. It's one of those things. I really like what Patterson did with the
Yeah,
role, especially as the Batman. As Bruce Wayne, I think he could have done more, but obviously as an actor, you followed the script, and the script
yeah,
obviously made it clear what direction Bruce Wayne was going in. Um, at the end of this film, I think you kind of get the impression that the role of the Batman has changed in Gotham City. Like he's becoming a symbol of hope
yeah.
over just like fear. At the start of this film, he is just vengeance. At the end of this film, he's no longer just that. He's more than that.
Yeah,
Um,
it's quite compelling to see the transformation of his character. Of I mean, and you really do get a sense of why he changes his stance, especially towards the end when he realizes like his stance of "I am vengeance" and how that inspires, and how the
yeah.
Riddler basically took his stance and used it to inspire his own wrongdoings.
Yeah, I think that was a turning point, especially when he beats up one of those who are influenced by Riddler, and they just say, "I am vengeance," and I
Yeah,
think that's when it's like the watershed moment. He realizes what his way of doing things has done.
yeah,
It hasn't given hope to the good people, but it has given ideas for some of the more worse off
yeah,
people in society. Speaking of Batman, obviously we see Batman interact a lot with Catwoman in this film, portrayed by Zoe Kravitz. I hope I'm
yes.
pronouncing that name correctly. Now, we've seen Catwoman before. Like Catwoman has appeared in other Batman films. Do you like this portrayal of her in this film? Like, do you think she was good with what she was given? Like, do you think she made the most of it?
Yeah, I mean, it that is one thing I will say about Catwoman. I didn't actually expect them to do the twist they did with her being Falcone's daughter. I did not expect that.
No,
That completely subverted my expectations. So that
that was a good
that
twist.
completely blew me away. I'll be honest. But yeah, I liked her performance in this one. I think she really suits the role as Catwoman. Yeah, she did a good job. I mean, you can compare it to previous Catwomans. I mean, the only in terms of like modern this style of Batman movies, we've got Anne Hathaway's portrayal of Catwoman, which again was a very different character in my opinion. But in terms
Yeah,
of this being more in line with how Catwoman is in the comics, yeah, it's a bit more of a more grounded take on the character, but at the same time, it's still quite I don't know, her character's still pretty somewhat more accurate, more in line with the comics. Though you get to see less of her anti or anti-hero villain stance as we've seen in the comic books, how she starts off with and progresses. Whereas in this movie, yeah, I like a character, but from the get-go you can tell she's on the stance of on doing things for the good. Not you don't see that progression of Catwoman, villainous things, and then you find out that it's trying in her twisted way of doing good and saving people or whatnot. So we didn't get to see that, but in terms of her character itself, how she interacted with Batman, I thought was pretty good though.
No, I agree. I mean, this isn't a villain. Like this isn't like Michelle Pfeiffer in Batman Returns. This isn't a villainous character. She's set up pretty early on as a kind of anti-hero in many ways. One thing I enjoyed, I really liked scenes between her and Patterson's Batman. I think they work really well together. It's kind of sad that she decides to leave at the end of this film. Will they bring her back? Potentially. I would say there's potential there. The twist, as you said, with her being Falcone's daughter was a real shock. I didn't see that coming whatsoever. So that was done. What was done really well. I also, as I brought up in my review, I love the fact that she has long fingernails as well, so that she can scratch. I thought that was a good. That didn't need to be there, but it's like they used that. They used the idea of a cat having long claws, so I thought that was done really well. But in terms of the main actors in this film, I would say, for me personally, the standout is Paul Dano as the Riddler.
Yeah.
Now, I was unsure. Obviously, we've seen Jim Carrey's performance as kind of an over-the-top Riddler. But Dano won me over from his initial scene when he kills the mayor. And he doesn't just kill him, he brutally murders him. And I just thought he was great. I could not see how they could have done the Riddler differently. Making him a serial killer, I thought worked really, really well. Especially with all the Riddler clues in that. So, MLC, Riddler's, the idea of Riddler, do you think they pulled it off well with that character?
I think they did. I was a bit unsure at the start of the movie of Riddler and the performance of Riddler because we didn't know much. It was just at the start it just sounded like generic villain but that's guess they're playing on the idea of you see like in like our world anonymous doing like scary like videos and stuff, calling out the injustice of society. So they're playing heavily on that aspect, and that worked in the end. But I was a bit unsure on, is the performance going to be good, going to be compelling, because it at the start off with, and that was just because of the character direction there, the way he was like communicating to Gotham. At first, I was a bit unsure. Of course, then when the plot further progresses and he makes a lot of his moves, then it gets a bit more interesting of the character of the Riddler. But then when the mask comes off and you get to see the actual performance of the Riddler and how he acts, then that completely won me over. Okay, and I was like, okay, this all completely makes sense. This works. Yeah. So I thought it's a bit mysterious, a bit unsure at first, but then when you get to the plot, you're like, oh, it's actually a lot more compelling. It's not just, generic bad guy. I've killed this person because I think they're a bad, powerful person. It then progresses, and then the games and twist he plays with the Batman as well. I think that was really clever.
Yeah, no, I think the Riddler works in a more detective-orientated Batman film. The Riddler's the perfect villain to do that. I liked you say about his early scenes when he's communicating with Gotham. I remember when I think it's the DA who has the bomb around his neck and Batman's there. I loved Riddler in that scene for the simple reason, like all of the clips of Riddler is not high quality.
Yeah,
it's like he's got it very close to his face. You could tell that he's not got all the technology in that, and it sends chills in the sense this is a serial killer who could be anywhere. He's not sophisticated. He's just killing people, and he's the only one who knows what's going on. Like the plot of this film is basically Riddler's mind games.
It's
like
a game.
He's trying to direct the characters. Yeah, he's trying to direct the characters every which way. And I also love the fact when they discover that Riddler's basically been right next to the Iceberg Lounge this whole time, just like in that flat. And even when you see the Riddler, he's not what some people would think a serial killer would look like. Like,
No.
he's pretty. He looks just like a geek. He doesn't appear to have any standout or menacing qualities about him, which I love it when they do that in films, because
Yeah.
it kind of shows it could be anyone. There's no stereotype. Like, a killer can be anyone.
Yeah,
And
and
I thought that was done well.
when he's revealed, like he's not some big powerful person. He's not, so I heard, in direct competition with like the mafia or something. He's not the head of this big organization. He's not a well-known character. He is pretty much really a nobody in a way, and that what makes him anybody is that he didn't come from power. He was a nobody. Anyone, like you said, could have been that person. And the fact by just using his brain and devising this big plan from nothing, that I think makes him more scary. Like, imagine if he had resources.
Yeah, exactly.
Imagine this guy had actual proper resources behind him.
But the thing I thought also was great was that he gives himself up in the end. He could have ran. He could have ran. He could have been at the mayor's shooting, but he didn't want to be, because he wanted to prove, like, he'd done what he wanted to prove. He'd proven how much corruption existed within Gotham City. And in many ways, he thought the Batman was working with him. That's why he kept leaving clues for the Batman, which would then push the Batman to find out more about the corruption and that. So in many ways, Riddler was inspired by Batman. But I'm pretty sure you'll agree with me on this. One of my favourite scenes in the film is when the Batman goes to visit Riddler in Arkham Asylum.
Yeah.
And I think every viewer's on edge, because for a moment you think Riddler knows the identity of Batman. And he keeps saying Bruce Wayne, and then he's like, he's the one we missed. And I think everyone was like...
Oh my god.
Like, you really did think for a little while that this guy knew that he was Batman. Like, for a split second, it just felt like that's what they were gearing up to. Did you think that the tension worked well?
Yeah, that tension
scene?
was brilliant. When every time he kept saying Bruce Wayne, then you could see the look on the Batman's face.
Yeah.
And he was like, honestly, part of me thought he was like, the look on his face that he was getting, it's like, damn, like, is Batman about to like break his shit and like kill this guy? That's honestly how I
really
thought.
did feel like that.
Like, yeah, the tension in that scene was like, oh, he knows all this time. Like, has this been part of his game? because a lot of the Riddler's plan was so close to Bruce Wayne.
Yeah,
it's like a lot of like what Riddler said. It's like how he was able to find out a lot of stuff about Thomas Wayne and Falcone. It's like, and like he like presented that to the Batman. It's like, then you're like, it's like, it was crazy. That's how closely and how tight knit it was linked to Bruce Wayne, and how tight knit it was sort of push Bruce Wayne to go in that direction after the Falcone and basically take down the crime structure of New York.
Yeah, Gotham City, you mean, not New York?
Yeah, Gotham City.
We get a bit confused.
I'm not going to make that mistake, even though a lot of the movie was filmed in Chicago.
Yeah, it's an easy mistake to make, I suppose.
I know.
And obviously we got loads of characters in this film, portrayed by really well cast actors. We've got Jeffrey Wright as Commissioner Gordon, Andy Serkis as Alfred, Colin Farrell as the Penguin.
Yeah.
It was Colin Farrell.
Really good performances.
Yeah. Now I thought I'm gonna just talk about the Batman and Commissioner Gordon, because I really enjoyed this relationship they have in this film, because you get the idea with Commissioner Gordon especially that he doesn't necessarily trust Batman, but it's a means to an end. He knows that Batman's needed in order to solve the crime, especially when some of the other police in this film are basically saying he could be a suspect for all we know.
Yeah.
You know, you need to... And he's like, no. But he's not just there to kind of help Batman try and solve stuff. He actually gets involved in some of the action and tries to figure out the plans. So I thought that was really well done. one character though, and I'd like to know your opinion on this. One character who I thought didn't get as much development as I would have liked is Alfred.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know.
I did think that.
He
Yeah.
didn't appear enough for me. What did you
No.
think about Alfred?
Alfred, I liked Alfred in this movie because I thought Andy Serkis's performance as Alfred. I mean, I was a bit unsure of Andy Serkis being Alfred at first, but yeah, I think he does a good. Andy Serkis in live roles actually does work really well. And it's quite well, I'm not shocked. It's a Matt Reeves movie, and of course he probably wanted Andy Serkis because they've worked so closely together for so many years now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought he did actually a really good role. It's just I wish they utilised more of Alfred and we got to see more of him because yeah, Andy Serkis playing the character does it really well. I just wish they used it more. I'm gonna be honest. I thought they were going to do a twist on the comics that was sort of rumoured, and how there's a Batman comic book story where it's revealed that Alfred was really Bruce Wayne's father, real biological father. I thought they maybe might
I
go
did
down
not
that
know
route.
that.
I saw like some speculation that they might do something like that, and I thought, oh, that they might try and play on that story, but they didn't in the end. But I thought, oh, it'd be really interesting to see because I honestly thought they were going to do that when. I honestly thought because they were foreshadowing, you know how he was going on about how you're not my father and all that stuff, and
Yeah.
even
No,
if it was like a thing where they're going to say, "Oh, I may not be your biological dad, but I am either," or they could do the twist where I am your biological dad, or they might do that twist where they play on fatherhood as not always needing to be blood related to be someone's father figure.
No, I mean the relationship between Bruce Wayne and Alfred in this film is, I would say, quite troubled.
Yeah.
Like it's clear it's not as close as like Bale and Kane were.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I wish that they had explored that further because obviously Bruce Wayne had a lot of kind of almost like he really didn't like Alfred a lot. And viewers didn't really know why. I mean, obviously you find out in the end, like once Bruce learns some new information, why he might not trust Alfred entirely. But before that, there just appears to be this kind of problem between them, which doesn't get addressed a lot. I mean, that's probably because we get more of the Batman than we do Bruce Wayne in this film. So obviously Alfred doesn't play as much of an active role as he would have done. And obviously the Penguin. The Penguin I thought was great.
Yeah, I loved him.
I mean, I wish I'd seen him more. But then part of me's like, he was in this film just enough to stand out, but not take away from the Riddler. You know, he was the car chase between him and Batman. I thought was really cool.
Yeah. That was brilliant.
Felt a lot more gritty than some of the car scenes that have been in Batman films.
That scene was really cool. I remember one of my friends I went to the cinema with when they're in that fight scene and you see the Batmobile light up for the first time. I remember one of my friends' reaction was like, like that scene was just so honest of the Batmobile, and you just hear the lights. You see the lights and you hear the engine roaring before the Batmobile comes roaring through. And it's like, oh, that was such a great build up for the reveal of the Batmobile in person. And yeah, that chase sequence especially. Oh, that was such a great scene.
And it looks like from the ending, I have to say, that it looks like Penguin will return. Like when they're talking,
they're set. There's a lot that they are setting up. Of course, this movie's going to be a trilogy of Batman movies, but they're also there's a lot of rumors at the moment that they're going to do a Fallen Arkham movie as well.
You know what? That would be. I've wanted that for a long time.
There's been a lot of rumors that that's the direction they're going down.
And I think, to be honest, with Patterson's Batman in this universe, an Arkham film would work. I can see that working really well. They've proven in this film, this is like a little side note I suppose, but they've proven in this film that they can do a multi-villain film and it doesn't feel overcrowded. So I really do think like an Arkham film could work, as long as you get the actors right. You know, if you get the actors right, then anything's possible.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I would say. But anyway, back to this film. Instead of speculating on the future, we have the plot of this film. Obviously, this film's 3 hours long, which is a long time.
Yeah.
It's a long time
it's
for
a very long movie.
but saying that, I've always thought this film's plot, I would say, is heavily inspired by the movie Seven. I don't know if you've ever seen Seven, but it's based around two detectives, Morgan Freeman and Brad Pitt, investigating a series of murders which seem to be connected.
Yeah.
And this film's very similar to that. Do you think this plot works? Like, do you think the plot twists are done all right? Does it make sense in the end? Or was there a lot of waffling which just kind of made up the time more than it could have been?
Overall, yeah, the plot worked. Everything made sense. All the pieces did put together. Though I did think there could be some bits where they could have just cut a little bit out there and there, just to get along with the pacing. I thought the pacing worked quite well. I thought there was probably more pacing issues in the third act of the movie that made it drag out, extend that a bit further. I feel like they could have just made minor tweaks there and there to sort of shorten the movie overall, because a movie's too long when it gets to the point where you're checking the time towards the end of the movie.
Yeah.
That's so I think there are probably some pacing issues where things went a bit slow in some places. I will say that, but overall, all the pieces do fit and work together in the end, and ultimately, I think makes for a really good viewing experience.
And obviously, there's a couple of plot twists. We mentioned the one with Catwoman being Falcone's daughter, which was a great plot twist. One, and maybe I'm just thick, but I didn't see this coming because I was trying to figure out who the rat was, because it's a lot of based on someone who ratted out, I think it was Mulroney, like a big mobster, to the police, and trying to figure out who it was. And even when they went after Penguin, who was like Falcone's right-hand man, and it's like, they're like, oh, well, it's obviously not Penguin. Well, then, if you go up the chain, obviously it had to be Falcone. But it's still, for me, it just came as a massive shock. And it's so obvious. It's one of those things, and this is always great about a film like this. You want to re-watch it, knowing what you know, to try and see the hints and clues. Now, did it come as a shock to you that Falcone was actually the one really running Gotham for the last 20 years?
Yeah, I really did not see that coming. I thought the rat was someone who was against Falcone and he was the target to bring him down in the first place. But then the plot later develops, and then you see that big twist. Hang on. There's a rat in his organisation to bring down someone else, and then when you see about who is the rat, oh my god, I did not
they just kill Falcone off. This film has no problem with killing off quite important characters, because Riddler she kills him off, which I thought was done well, because obviously you think that Falcone might still be quite important to the plot, but then no, you're wrong. He's dead. Nope. Forget about him. So I did think that was done well. And my main problem, and you mentioned the third act, I don't know why the final fight scene between Batman and kind of Riddler's impersonators, and I hate to say this, that goes on for too long, in my opinion. It just, he's caught the Riddler, and I get the Riddler's plan or what he's trying to do, we've seen it in the modern world. People are willing to follow people who may do bad things because they think they want to change. Riddler's actual plan of there's no point electing new politicians or governments. Just the whole system needs to be burnt down because it's just too corrupt to save. But having Batman just fight a bunch of Riddler impersonators, I don't know why. It just felt like it dragged in the end. It felt like it could have been a lot shorter. I kind of knew Catwoman was gonna save Batman at when it looked like he weren't gonna be saved. The best thing about it is when Batman seems to go insane and just starts beating up that one Riddler impersonator. So overall, the ending, do you think it was a good payoff, a good final act? Because you said you thought the third act pacing could have been done better.
It's just the pacing and the time it sort of drags in some places, but overall I did quite enjoy the third act. I love the grand reveal of everything to the Riddler's grand plan, and the fact that ultimately Riddler won in a way. Won in terms of he was able to carry out his plan, but lost in the fact he wasn't able to break the soul of Gotham or the soul of Batman. So I guess that's one victory that he wasn't able to win. But the fact that, yeah, I didn't expect Riddler's plan to be able to be carried out like that. I thought, there might be the ultimate thing will be stopping Riddler's destruction, like flooding of Gotham. That would be the grand plan. But no, then it's like boom. I honestly did not expect that to happen. That's for sure. I expect them to sort of figure out sort of what Riddler was doing and stop in the nick of time, sort of like that traditional trope. But no, the fact that they subverted my expectations there and actually did what they did, I really did like that. But yeah, overall, the ending of the movie where it comes to realization of what it means to be Batman, I thought was really good. Oh, and look at that. Tommy, we've lost you. Tommy, you're on mute apparently.
Sorry. I got my camera went off for a second, and I was trying to sort it out. No, sorry, no, I did hear what you're saying, and I completely agree with you. Obviously, this film's setting up, as you said, a trilogy, and we get the Riddler's final scenes in Arkham when let's face it, that's the Joker, isn't it? I mean, that can't be anyone else.
Yeah, of course.
He's
that,
talking.
Yeah, I mean, that laugh.
And part of me is happy about that, but then part of me is like, do we have to see another Joker?
Yeah.
We've already seen so many Jokers, and what Joaquin Phoenix Joker will be difficult to beat. So do we need to see another Joker? That's all I'm saying. Like,
no, we don't need any more Joker anytime soon. I want them to explore the other villains. Of course, yeah, bring some Joker somewhat into the fold of things of him being locked up at Arkham Asylum. I guess they sort of can't avoid that, but I sort of just I think they should leave that more sort of like an Easter egg of like the inmates who locked up at Arkham, and maybe brings these characters in later in the line, whether they complete the trilogy and then want to go full on Arkham Asylum and like have these characters, break out for like a team up movie maybe. I don't know. Definitely not anytime soon. Especially characters like the Joker. Yeah. I want them to set up and develop the other Batman movies and the other Batman villains that they have, because they've got so many villains that they have a shot of trying to do a really good job with. Definitely. Because we've seen Joker used a lot. We've seen Joker done really well 2 times in a row now. I don't want them to overuse Joker and oversaturate the character. Otherwise, that's just gonna. You don't want to use character too many times and redo a character so many times, because you're just gonna get bored and saturated of that character.
Exactly. I mean, at one point it looked like they were setting up Hush, maybe, because of course they were going into that. So at one point it looked like they were setting up Hush, but obviously, as he's supposedly dead, then but let's face it, if they could potentially bring Hush in as a villain, that's possible. Batman's got a very rich rogues gallery, much like Spider-Man's, and part of me gets annoyed that it's always on the same villains, know. So I hope Joker's Easter egg is kind of like the Easter egg for Scorpion at the end of Spider-Man Homecoming, where it's hinted, but it's never actually followed up. It's kind of left there. So anyway, in conclusion, MLC, the Batman, I think if you ask me, and I'll see if you agree, good setup film.
Yeah.
I'd be interested to see where it goes. But there are a couple of things they could have done to make it like the Dark Knight standard.
Oh, yeah.
Like it's not there yet. It's not there yet.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely do feel that. Yeah, really good movie. It didn't leave me, thinking, wow, that was the greatest Batman movie I've ever seen. Though it didn't. No, by no means did I go out thinking, oh, that was terrible. I really enjoyed it. It just there's a difference in like how you feel about a movie. There's really good, really enjoyed that. Then there's like that top peak of, wow, this was really good. Then there's just a bit above that says, wow, this was bloody excellent, bloody amazing. Oh my god, this is like the best thing ever. And it didn't quite get to that high peak level, which to be fair, very few movies do get to that nowadays. But it was still a very, very good take on the character, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm really interested to see where they take this character, where they develop this whole universe as a whole. Of course, I want to see more of this Batman. I want to see the rumored Arkham movie that they might be doing as well, and things like that. So I'm really interested to see where they go with this movie. I think that it's going to go in a good direction. I'm part of me sort of glad they didn't go down the whole DCEU Batman route like they were originally going, because I don't think they could have pulled off a movie like this in those conditions.
No, I think this film is too grounded to exist within the DCEU. If I had to summarize the Batman in one word, I would say potential. You've got the potential there, and with Matt Reeves as director, it could be really good, considering Matt Reeves was brought on like halfway through to kind of direct this film. Given a full film, let's see where it goes. I mean, let's face it, the amount of money the Batman's made almost guarantees that a sequel will be made.
Well, they signed a 3-picture trilogy deal anyway. So there's going to be a trilogy of Batman movies to begin with anyway. It's just whether they do the extra bits on the side, like the Arkham movie I said, remains to be seen. But yeah, there's a 3-picture deal that Matt Reeves did sign.
I'd love to see an Arkham film. That was they should have just done the Arkham, they should have just done Arkham Asylum, Arkham City, and Arkham Origins, and Arkham Knight, just as live action.
Yeah.
that would have worked.
Yes.
But anyway, I think that's round, because we could be talking here for hours.
I know.
We're gonna be rounding this discussion to a close now. So I would like to thank MLC once again for joining us on our annual monthly,
weekly, bi-weekly discussion.
Yeah, whenever he's available, whenever
Quarterly.
they're available, we get them on. That's what we do. So anyway, thank you for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe in order to receive great and maybe even improved quality content in the future. And we will see you in another one. See ya.
Bye bye for now.